A very warm welcome, everybody, on the first day of July. It is a Tuesday and it is time for the Africam show to you by explore.org. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. And we have started out where we often do at the always exciting Aldono waterhole up in Kenya, where over the last week or so we have seen an influx of elephant bulls that are enjoying the water here. We've seen quite a lot of interesting interactions of late, so we'll see what today has in store for us. But I see we've got a few hellos coming in, as we always do. Remember, if you are joining us for the first time, it's live and interactive for the next 45 minutes. So do send in your questions, comments, thoughts, and we'll be very happy to discuss them with you or answer anything that comes my way. My name is Ben Coley, and yeah, hopefully I will be giving you some interesting insights into what we're seeing. But a few hellos to start the afternoon. Jan Powers, you're in a very hot Arizona. I believe it has been very, very warm in the States recently, as well as in Europe. They were talking about London getting up to about 35 degrees today. And I know with the Club World Cup soccer going on in the States, there's been quite a few stories about the oppressive heat. So, Jan, I hope your aircon is working well. Amber CO, you're joining us as well. You've got some coffee and you are most welcome. And thanking everybody that helps bring us these incredible shows. Jack de Boer from Chesapeake in Virginia, and Casper's third ghost as well. Happy Tuesday to you as well, Casper's third ghost. And I'm glad you have an iced lemon tea ready for the show. That sounds rather nice. Josh Drown, good morning to you as well. And MG Leopard Spots, you have some iced water. How very civilized. But some iced coffee or an iced espresso on the way. Namaste to Zygote as well, and April Owl as well, saying good morning from a warm and sunny Connecticut. You have warm peach and blueberry muffins and a cherry iced tea. That actually sounds really rather tasty. I currently don't have any fluid whatsoever with me, unfortunately, so I shall probably go down the same line as these elephants and go with Mother Nature's natural elixir. Shame, come on, giraffe. See if you could find a gap. It's been relatively cool, I have to say, in the low faults over the last few days. It's a nice, clear, sunny afternoon now, but it was rather cloudy this morning. And it was somewhat chilly last night. I was doing a stargazing event yesterday evening and chose to do it, but ended up doing it quite close to the Blinder River, which was wonderful in terms of scenery, but also did make it a little bit chilly. And everybody was, we were doing star jumps to keep warm by the end of it, certainly, but it was a great night nonetheless, clear skies, which is the most important thing. Just drown, you're saying an elephant board meeting. Yes, absolutely. A meeting of minds in a wealth of experience and adventure that I'm sure that has been had between these three bulls at the moment. But we have had some days where we've had more than 10 bulls gathered around this little waterhole. And so that has led to a few disagreements, which is always entertaining to see. I remember, say, it was 3 or 4 days ago, I think 1 ton nudged, I say nudged in elephant terms, that's quite a few tons behind that nudge. One of the other bulls who invaded his personal space. It's always interesting to watch the interactions of these bachelor groups and try and see who's who in the zoo, as it were. Who else do we have? DNC, good morning to you as well. You have your coffee, excellent. And Osa Negro from sunny British Columbia, also with a coffee in hand. And happy Canada Day to those who celebrate. I did not know it was Canada Day. So, yes, anyone joining us from Canada, a very happy Canada Day. Looks like the one facing us on the far side has a little bit of secretions from his temporal glands, so potentially is experiencing a little bit of must. I don't know. I can't quite see his back legs to see whether they are stained or whether he is dripping fluid from his penile sheath there, which is a surefire indication that he would be in heavy must. I don't see any obvious staining, so that could just be an emotional response to the other bulls being around, but possibly is why the other two are giving him a slightly wider berth, in case he is a little bit cranky. Of course, testosterone levels during full must for a big bull like this can surge to 300% more than they would normally be, which is why it's always advisable to give a musting bull elephant a little bit of extra space. Expect the unexpected. These two look as if they're considering locking tusks, but I think they've maybe decided it all seems like a little bit too much effort right now. Yes, that one's also got some little secretions, but no sign of say full must in any of these bulls. So remember, it's not just must that causes that. We do see those temporal gland secretions in females as well. It's often say just a response to the best phrasing I've heard of it is a heightened state of emotion. Could be happy, could be sad, could be excited, and it can happen quite quickly. I've been watching elephants before and something happens and you can see, particularly with the females, if they get stressed, you can just see that it just sort of spreads that darker color from that little gland behind the eye. Okay, but we'll keep an eye on these bulls and see if there's any interesting interactions. But I think we're going to head over to Hwangi and go and have a look at some of our beautiful ground hornbills if they're still hanging around. Fabulous hornbills, impalas, baboons, but always a treat to see the ground hornbills. Of course, very much an endangered species and really rather magnificent when you see them out in the wild, always bigger than I think they are. They would come up to my thigh, and you certainly wouldn't want to get in the way of one of those beaks, strong enough to break the shell of a tortoise without too much issue. Looks like we've got a. Oh, no, I thought that was a juvenile on the left. I didn't see the red, but I see more of the red skin around the face now. Juveniles often have more of a yellowy hue and far less colourful. And that's one of the reasons, of course, that the hornbills are struggling. There are many reasons, unfortunately, a habitat loss, particularly of the large trees and the natural cavities that they require for nesting, being one of the major problems, which is why a lot of artificial nesting sites are provided by various conservation initiatives to try and promote the nesting. But it's always amazed me that it's not the greatest reproductive strategy, unfortunately, that hornbills have, particularly the ground hornbills. Of course, they'll often lay two eggs, but generally speaking, the second egg is purely the insurance policy. And if the first one hatches, the second one almost always doesn't make it. Those are the ones that many conservation organizations will rescue and try and rear and rehabilitate to place back into the wild. But on the assumption that that young hornbill makes it through to adulthood, you are looking at somewhere between 7 or 8 year intervals between births, because there's a long period of time that those youngsters will need to stay with the parents. So for a bird, even though they're relatively long-lived, they can reach up into their 40s. But somewhere between 7 and 9 years between births, even a successful uh, adult female or a successful pair, on the assumption they have to get to at least 7, 8 before they can produce their own eggs, you're probably looking at only 4 successful clutches or individual chicks that are raised to adulthood during the course of their life. That is not a particularly good return. Dr. Book, you're saying wow with lots of O's, so a wow. Yeah, very, very special to see ground hornbills. And Oceanegro, you're saying big birds. Yeah, so they are bigger than you realize and very stocky, chunkily built. And it was amazing that they can actually get up into the air with the weight. Of course, a lot of it is feathers. If we were to ever see completely featherless ground hornbill, they would look a little bit slimmer than they do now, but it's still an awful lot of weight and a lot of pectoral muscle and clever aerodynamics to be able to create enough uplift on those wing strokes for them to fly. Christy, you're saying they have the best eyes and eyelashes. They do. We often talk about giraffes and elephants' eyelashes, but I agree. They look very manicured at ground hornbill's eyelashes, like they've got nice mascara on there. And you love the call as well. Yes, that deep booming call. It's on a misty morning out in the bush to hear those ground hornbills calling. That it resonates rather like a lion's roar. Lions, ostriches, and ground hornbills, and even the Verreaux's eagle owl as well, all have those deep booming calls. But I'd love to get a photo of one of these, like a real close-up eye photo. There are some beautiful pictures that really do accentuate those eyes and those eyelashes. Very striking birds as well, with that red and black contrast. You can see the big sort of resonance chamber under the bill, which allows them to make that very deep booming noise that they do make. So usually early morning, the best time to hear them. I consider myself pretty fortunate, considering there aren't that many of them around. Most times when I take a trip into Kruger, um, I would say I expect to see ground hornbills, but it's not uncommon to see a little group of ground hornbills at some point during a few-day excursion into the Kruger Park. But nice to know that there is a population up in Hwangi as well. Julian Thomas was saying several hornbill species have eyelashes that some humans would pay decent amounts of money to emulate. Absolutely, thousands and thousands of dollars, rands, pounds, whatever your chosen currency, to be able to have manicured eyelashes such as these. Look at those very strong, thick legs as well. Of course, they use those for grabbing hold of prey. Very, very strong feet. Not much is safe from a ground hornbill. They just cut sways through the bush, taking anything they can find, even small mammals, other birds. I've seen one pull a chameleon out of a tree before. Say tortoises, lizards, they're not fussy. They always seem to stride with purpose, I find, as well. They look like very confident birds. If this is just the three, I haven't seen any more, but it doesn't look like there are any juveniles. These all look like fully fledged adults, certainly, looking at the markings there. Meandering through the impalas, giving them a little bit of a wide berth as well. Oh, I happened to glance away of the screen there, and I didn't see whether we'd found two more or whether this is still part of the same group. But again, it still looked like adults. No sign of any youngsters. Lindy Tillipau, you're saying you don't really get a good size perspective on the screen, and you're agreeing that these birds are tall. Yeah, over a meter tall. So my birding app reckons 110 centimeters. So imagine that standing next to you with a beak, which is pretty much as what is that? Probably about 20 centimeters or so of beak and an awful lot of power behind it. Again, sort of 3.5 or somewhere between 3 and 4 kilograms. That's a big weight, so to be able to fly, but they've got very, very substantial wingspan and very broad wings as well. So all about creating that pressure difference so that you can generate, or they can generate, sufficient lift. I think maybe it is just those three. I don't see any more, but very, very nice to see. It'd be lovely if they came close to the camera so we can investigate those eyes, say huge eyes that they have. And I think for a bird, it's difficult to sort of put it into words, but yeah, a bird's eye, you can't quite see much going on. They don't portray huge amounts of emotion, but ground hornbills do. Maybe it's a combination of the eyelashes and everything else, but you can look into the eyes of a hornbill and actually feel that it's looking back at you and analyzing you. Wasn't it great? You want to know where they nest? Do they nest on the ground? No, you might think they do, being such large birds, but they have very, very specific nesting requirements, which, as I said, is one of the problems with them, or for their species in terms of their survival. They will only use natural cavities in trees, and they have to be large trees with large natural cavities to be able to sustain or allow such large birds to get inside it. So that's why a lot of the artificial nests that are provided do look like sort of natural cavities. They're not like woodpeckers or barbets. They can't drill a hole with that beak in a tree to make a cavity large enough for themselves. So they rely on natural cavities. And with deforestation, with you could argue, I don't want to say an overpopulation of elephants, but a large number of elephants in an area pushing over trees, us more likely removing large trees from areas, it does reduce nesting opportunities for them. I think it would be easier for them to make their own nest. I mean, we see vultures and other large birds make big platform nests. I mean, look at the nest that a hummerkop is capable of producing, an enormous, making its own natural cavity within that great network of sticks that the hammerkop puts in the fork of a tree. Perhaps it's time for the ground hornbills to learn how to build a platform nest as opposed to relying on natural cavities. But very, very special to see. Very, very happy we caught up with some ground hornbills. Don't see them on the cameras very often. Okay, I think we'll head back to Aldono. It sounds like the elephants may have made way for some giraffe. Always entertaining to watch a giraffe having a drink. Maybe the elephants haven't made way, but it looks like numbers are on the side of the giraffe and they are taking their opportunities. Wow, so they're all queuing up in the background as well. Yeah, that's what happens if you get too close. I always remember, but the very first game drive that I ever went on when I was a student at Bushwise, we went out with Mark, who was the head trainer, and we saw a giraffe at one point, and he asked us, um, where do giraffes lay their eggs? And of course, we all know that giraffes don't lay eggs, they're mammals, but nobody really knew anybody, and we certainly didn't know the team well enough to say anything. And you could see that we were all like, they don't lay eggs, do they? I'm sure they give birth to live young. But I will always remember that one as how silly we all felt, and no one had the confidence to say what we all knew was correct. But you have an awful lot of trust in your guides. So again, a great deal of responsibility. And this was before the days where everybody had access to chat GPTs and Wikipedias, and most game reserves when you're out on drive didn't actually have any signal to be able to check anything on phones. So as silly as it sounds, we all questioned ourselves. See, this male has just had a quick analysis of that female while she is in a prone position, testing a little bit of the urine there, getting the recent hormones, seeing if there's anything worthwhile. I'm going to go back for another check. Engage that organ. So we always call it organ of Jacobson, but it really should be organ of Jakobsen because was a Danish naturalist who discovered or at least named that organ in the roof of the mouth, which is able to analyze those pheromones and those hormones. Well, Negro, you are welcome. I assume you're thanking me for answering your question, but thank you for the question, more importantly. Always more fun when we get questions coming through. Makes us think. Have to dredge our memory banks for all of this information. I was quite interested. Off he goes. You'll find the male will, if she is in estrus or coming into estrus, the male will just follow her around like that for days. Waiting for the opportunity to have a chance, but also potentially warding off any other males who might be interested. Abasio, I'm glad you enjoyed our discussion about the ground hornbills. Yeah, they are really special. It's one of those things in Kruger. I mean, I'm a keen birder, so I will stop and look at any bird that I see. But, with guests, not everybody is a keen birder and they don't want to see every little what we would call an LBJ, a little brown job. But it's always worth stopping and watching the ground hornbills. So always good entertainment. And such is their conservation status at the moment, it is something that we should all be made aware of. They are under a great deal of pressure and their future remains a little bit uncertain. So, conservation, as always, is about education, it's about raising awareness. And so, a great thanks to all of the wonderful conservation initiatives that are doing their part for the ground hornbills and all of the other species from the big to the small. Having spent some time on the Buller Game Reserve over the last few months doing some pieces of work out there, of course, they do have the ground hornbill project there, and there are some artificial nesting boxes. They are one of the longest running organizations. I couldn't put a date on it, but I think certainly in excess of 20 years they've been operating. And their mandate has always been to try and keep it as minimal exposure to humans as possible. So they will rescue that insurance chick, let's call it that, and they will try and raise it in such a way that they have very, very, very little human interaction at all, so that they can be released successfully back into the wild. Right, but it looks like the drafts have moved off for now to be replaced with a plethora of birds. I see a variety of starlings and doves. Zygote, you say you heard a rosy patched bushrike calling. I don't seem to have any audio, unfortunately, so I will take your word for it. Although, to be honest, I wouldn't know what that one sounds like. I don't know that bird. Doesn't occur here in southern Africa. So very well done if that is the case. But sounds like we have some more elephants in Safari Hook. So let's jet southwest to Namibia. A mirror image of elephants enjoying the water. Just to actually give you an idea of the depth of the water here. I'm sure these elephants just look at the dry, desolate land in this area, of course, especially this time of year in Namibia. So these areas of water, veritable oases for great elephants like this. Time for a bath, time for a paddle, time for a shower, and a good hearty drink. And maybe even a little doze while standing in the water. What a great idea. Good little scratching posts in there. Everything you might need as an elephant. As you can see these dead trees as giant non-portable loofahs. Not sure I'll be drinking my own bath water though. I don't know too much about this specific waterhole, but to have so much water in an area such as this, I have to assume that it's being pumped. But it's interesting to see the elephants just drinking the water from the midst. Oh, there's something moving in the background. What's that on the shore? Is that a jackal? Just gone behind the elephant. Um, Normally, they would, of course, congregate around the inflow pipe. We see it happening at Camelthorne. We see it all the time at Aldono, at various other pans here. You see the elephants all arguing over who gets access to that fresh water. But I think probably in a place like Namibia, you're just very, very grateful for whatever you can get. Yeah, definitely something in the background, just next to the elephant's tail there. I think it's a black-backed jackal. Certainly has the right shape and size. I think it's a little early for jackals to be out, but remember, particularly over there in the west with clear skies like this, nothing to insulate the heat of the day. It gets very, very cold in the evenings. So these crepuscular and nocturnal animals in the winter do get active a lot earlier. And in areas that are far more devoid of human um, meddling and interference, we often find that jackals are more active during the daytime. There have been some studies suggesting that many years ago jackals were far more daytime animals, but because of persecution from humans, particularly from farmers looking after their livestock and things, that they have learned very, very quickly or evolved to become far more nocturnal in terms of their activities. But generally considered a crepuscular species, so more active at dawn and dusk. MG leopard spots, you're saying one looks like it has no tusks. Well, I see small tusks on this one. I didn't actually notice the other one, but it's quite possible. We do get elephants with no tusks. It's more of a genetic thing. Of course, Asian elephants, females don't have tusks, only the males do. Both sexes normally do in African elephants, but say all to do with genetics. And I'm sure to some extent will play a role in their ability to dominate in certain situations. But as with many animals, a lot of it is about confidence and posturing and body language, as opposed to specific physical attributes. They certainly help, don't get me wrong, but you do see dominant animals that are not, dare I say, particularly well endowed in the tusk or horn department, that are still able to do very well just based on their attitude. MG Leopard Spot, you're cancelling your comment about the missing tusk. Copy that. I assume you're referring to this one. But yes, they're so small and they look rather muddy, as if he's been digging around and it's sort of crusted over the, yeah, there where it goes into the shadows. It does blend into that dark skin. So you are forgiven, MG Leopard Spots. Very slow, lethargic drinking today. These elephants not in a hurry at all. And why would you? Why would you want to leave an oasis like this? I see Kirsten's agreeing with me as well. It looked like a jackal. I'm sure it was. I'm not sure what else it would be. Drawing pictures in the water with his truck. People expect to see some sand grouse around this time of the day as well. The double-banded sand grouse are well known for coming to water late in the afternoon, whereas the Namakwa sand grouse generally will come to water in the mornings. Of course, the sandgrouse, famed for their ability to absorb water into their feathers or to pick up the water, soak their feathers in the water, and then take it back to their nests for their chicks during the breeding season. But it's one of those ways you could potentially find water because early morning, say, if you can identify the Namaqua sand grouses, chances are they are flying towards water. And the double banded sort of going towards water late in the afternoon. Interesting how two species of the same genus have very, very different drinking habits in terms of time, but different niches to avoid overpopulation. Jack de Boer, no, an elephant's tusk does not grow back, unfortunately. It's a bit like you breaking a tooth. Elephants can't go to dentists to get implants or bridges or false teeth put in. So, no, if a tusk breaks, it breaks, unfortunately. And not too dissimilar to your teeth. As long as it breaks towards the tip, then there should be no associated pain with it. There is a root, but the root does not extend the entire length of the tusk. I don't know exactly how far it comes out, but I would guess probably about a third of the tusk has a root structure in it, and the rest of it is just pure ivory. So again, if you chip a tooth, it doesn't hurt, but if you hurt the root, it's very, very uncomfortable. But yeah, these elephants not in a particular hurry. Sounds like we've got some crocodiles enjoying the late afternoon sun somewhere, possibly at Tau, but let's go have a look. Three crocodiles, no less, at Tau, yeah. Taking in the last hour or two, or what is the time now? 4:30. Yeah, our last hour or so of sunlight, preparing for the cooler evening ahead. Trying to have a look. It looks like certainly the one on the right. I noticed the other day when we were at one of these water holes, we had two crocodiles lying next to each other, one much darker, and then one almost that you could call a melanistic crocodile. Very, very light coloration. I'm wondering if it's that one on the right. You can see a very yellowish hue to it, less melanin than some of the others, certainly. Which I wonder how that would work in terms of heat regulation, potentially reflecting a lot of that heat as opposed to absorbing it. But remember, their main mechanism of absorbing that heat is through the osteoderms, those little raised, almost like bony protrusions, those bony fins that run down the back and the tail, and the blood vessels that are close to the surface that heat up from the sunlight. So, not just being absorbed via the skin, it will help, but they have those specific mechanisms to assist with thermoregulation. Which you might wonder, how does a crocodile operate in cold water during the dead of night? But remember that water heats up and cools down much more slowly than the air. There's more substance to it. So it tends to hold the heat an awful lot better, cools down much more slowly than the surrounding temperature. So it can be warmer in the water than outside of the water. And when you've got very, very thick insulating skin like a crocodile has, it's not too much of a concern. But as a general average, they'll try and get to somewhere between 27 to 33 degrees Celsius. That would be the best sort of active temperature for a crocodile if they can get there. But of course, they can survive in much cooler temperatures. They will just slow their metabolism down, slow their heart rates, become far more inactive, and then can survive much cooler temperatures. But once you get below sort of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, then it becomes potentially fatal for a prolonged period, at least, if they had to deal with those temperatures. Nice to see a little bit of Tao's bird life there. We've got a common moorhen, and we've got a red-billed teal, which I've always rather liked, a bit like the ground. In fact, both of them rather like the ground hornbills with those contrasting black and red, certainly on the moorhen, and that nice stripy face of the teal with the red beak. We also get a one with a blue beak as well. They're almost like very sort of deliberate markings, that straight line just going across or just underneath the level of the eye. Yeah, very striking bird, the red-billed teal. Nice to see a little bit of variety in the birds, and particularly the crocodiles. We've got three crocodiles there with very differing markings and different colors, and nice to see. Almost looks like camouflage paint on the one on the far left. Very, very important to blend in with that vegetation as a stealth hunter, sneaking up on his prey. And so it's incredible how crocodiles can hide. They can hide in like half a foot of water, and you'd never know that there was a massive killing machine in there. Oh, have we got there? A young black crake, by the look of it, like a juvenile black crake that hasn't developed its full coloration, yellow beak and red legs in the adults. Here comes another one. And yeah, look like young crakes, I would assume. Being chased off by the moorhen. They're coming back for more. The confidence of youth. Where are your parents, little crakes? It's a little bit like the jacanas. The crakes have got very, 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 very long toes, these big sort of spindly toes that spread out and can span a very large distance and dissipate that, in fairness, minimal body weight to allow them to walk on lilies and aquatic vegetation without sinking. See a ground hornbill attempt to walk across a bunch of water lilies, I think would be quite comical and fairly fruitless. But it is amazing how these birds can move so quickly on those tiny little stilt-like legs. I mean, take the black-winged stilt, for example. I'm not sure how often we see those on the cameras, but those massive, long, spindly legs, they don't look as if you could balance more than a couple of grams on them, and yet they seem to be able to serve those birds well. They wander around looking for little aquatic insects. But these little grakes have got lots of energy. I say they're looking for insects. I need to just double check the diet of the black crake. I can't remember specifically what they are. Yeah, earthworms, insects, crustaceans, mollusks, small fish, plant matter, and seeds. So everything. Oh, who have we got there? We've got a heron. Are you a young striated heron by the looks of it? Peering rather intently into the water. Of course, these herons are rather clever and have been recorded using tools for fishing as well. Various reports of them catching things like grasshoppers and crickets and then dropping them in the water and waiting for a fish to come and grab the insect, and then the herons themselves grabbing the fish. And what's always been amazing to me is it has been recorded that if they see a fish that they don't deem worthy of a snack approaching their bait, they will quickly take it out of the water before the fish gets it, so they can wait for the fish to disappear, put it back in, and try and attract a better meal. Which is the use of tools suggests intelligence and problem solving. And again, I think like often we don't give these animals enough credit for their level of intelligence. But staring very, very intently into the water. See the teal stamping in there as well, just disturbing the silt on the, there it goes again, disturbing the silt, try and find any particular morsels he's looking for under there, filter feeding with that beak. Really getting stuck in, found something good down there. So they do eat grass, these teals, but also seeds of aquatic plants. So maybe he's found something growing under there. But interesting to see him treading the water just to disturb things. Actually, well, I was out in New Zealand 18 months ago or so, and they had a thing called a South Island robin. They went to a place called Ulva Island, which is a very isolated um, area with minimal human interference and trying to keep it as natural as possible. And they've learned because people do walk around on trails there. There's no vehicles, but there are one or two walking trails. And if you stand very, very still and see one of those robins, um, then they will actually come to you. And if you sort of scrape the ground, they'll come and investigate because they've realised that that is potentially going to unearth some little insects. And I watched them for quite a while, and they also do this little foot shaking, foot tremor. It's so fast that you can barely see it with the naked eye. It's just a blur, but very probably done to try and entice little insects and worms and things closer to the surface. But amazing to watch this little tiny robin and its specific um, choices in terms of the way that it works. See, Corey, you're saying that that could be a juvenile black crown night heron. In fairness, I didn't even consider that, and I'm going to have to double check. Um, but it's quite possible. I think you might well be right. I may have to eat some humble pie there, Corey, rather than being a Jew. It does look a little bit stocky, perhaps, for a green-backed heron. I did make an assumption there. But yeah, it could well be a black crown night heron juvenile. Well played, Corey. Hey, all the information I told you about the striated heron is correct, but I didn't even consider a night heron. So, Negro, you were saying that the teal reminds you of a ruddy duck in North America. I do not know what they look like, Negro, so I will take your word for it. But the name, I assume, suggests that it has some red on it. The more I look at my picture, Crow, I think I'm inclined to agree with you. Note to self, juvenile black-crowned night heron at town. No idea whether they have learned to fish using bait, but still, interesting stuff about the greenback heron for next time we see one. Right. Well, 45 minutes unfortunately has flown by, but thank you everybody for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Lovely to see some elephants and some giraffe. I think highlight for me was seeing those crowned hornbills as well. Really, really special. So, whatever your plans are for the rest of this Tuesday, I wish you well. Shelter from the heat if it's very hot. Go warm up if it's very cold. Oh, look, you're getting a little courtesy from the night heron. But that's all we've got time for, everybody. We will see you next time. Thank you very much.